We just don't speak for the next 2 hours. We're
And then
live,
I'm
but we
ready for
just
it.
sit here statuesque.
Let's just wait until our normal time. Make it feel normal. We'll wait until around 5 to get started.
Yeah, but we'll stay on unspeaking. Yeah, perfect. All right. I'm gonna knock over these protein pancakes or protein waffles.
Oh, something that I think we should address. Let me double check it to make sure that this is a thing. On our website schedule, it says that we have the Sellersville Moose Lodge on Friday the 1st and the Brick House Bar and Grill on the 8th. On our personal Google Calendar, it says we have nothing next weekend, and we have the Brick House Warminster on the 8th and the Sellersville Moose Lodge on the 9th.
Sure.
So because I mentioned that to my parents when they were asking oh, we're off next weekend, but we have 2 gigs in a row, because that's what I'd seen on our Google Calendar for the following week.
That's which is correct.
And that's okay. And then they were like, oh, because on your schedule it says you guys are at the Sellersville Moose Lodge on the 1st.
Yeah, I can fix it. Alex
Okay.
probably just never updated it from when we rescheduled that.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay, I was gonna say, are we 100% sure? Were there multiple dates that we were talking about,
We were
or what was
scheduled
it?
on the first, and they asked us to move to the ninth.
Okay, cool. I'm just glad that somebody knew which
Yeah.
one of those was definitely right, and
Yep.
it
It
wasn't
is
in question.
definitely not next weekend
Okay, cool.
because I changed it
Okay,
in the Google Calendar to the
gotcha. Yeah,
ninth.
I was just very unsure because I'm like, sure, whatever the dates are, that's what the dates are, but I'll be there, but I wasn't the one making the plans.
No, that's fine. I can change it right now. It's not that hard.
Good.
Let's see. Schedule. Yep, 8th and ninth.
Cool.
And those are our only gigs scheduled in March.
Really, we don't have it naked or anything, or is
They're
that
the
not
only
till
ones that
April?
are on. They're the only ones that are on our website.
Yeah, but I don't know what's on our calendar. I thought maybe. uh,
Let me look. No, that's it.
Okay.
April, we have
I know we
Sarah's
have a
thing on the
naked.
6th. Then our stay is on the 13th, and then Naked on the 20th. So we have
Okay.
3 in April. Looks like we have 3 in May.
Okay.
So
Now that we
I
got
mean,
I'm glad that the Great Barn's reopening, and
yeah, me too.
I'm especially glad that it's at a place that was originally a music venue.
Yeah,
So we should have a good system and a stage that is nice.
yeah. Why are you unavailable and unassailable on August 17th?
Bill Gates' wedding.
Bill Gates' wedding. I love that. Impressive.
Yeah.
You got an invite to that.
Is it?
I mean,
Is it that impressive? I mean, he was at my wedding. We are cousins. The second cousins, technically.
good old Bill Gates. I mean, I feel like he should have bought you a house if you were second cousins.
I can ask him.
He could buy you 5 or 6 houses, honestly.
I mean, he don't get me wrong. He definitely makes more money than I do. He makes good money, but I don't know if he makes that kind of money.
Nick, Bill Gates is a multi-billionaire. I have to tell you.
No one figured this out about him.
I have to explain to you.
I
Bill
don't
Gates is
know.
a multi-billionaire.
I'm not sure about this. I mean, if
So,
so, he lives well within his means.
I mean, good for him. All right. Let me just. Yeah, I was just checking out our schedule. We only have one scheduled thing in August because you're not
Yeah.
available the 17th, and then I'm not available the next 2 weekends because I will not get COVID before my wedding.
Mm.
I will not do it.
Will you?
I fucking refuse.
I don't know. I think you'll find a way.
I refuse to get it from a gig. If I get it because Sydney brings it home from work, that's not on me.
That's true.
But if I get it at a gig, that's on me. I will not do that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, schedule's updated.
Excellent. But I mean, the Bill Gates weekend, I could do that Friday or that Sunday if something.
Yeah.
comes up.
I'm sure the schedule will fill out. I was just looking at where we're at right now in February. Of the we have some openings. I know I think the last week of June, first week of July. I forget the exact dates, but I'm going up the mountains, so I'll figure that out. But that's going to be 1 week that I'm not around. But it's not my birthday week this time, so we theoretically may be playing near my birthday, which is a sin. It's a sin. We will go to hell for it. All right. I'm pretty sure I'm ready to go.
I was hoping you would be at some point.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, then I'm going to hit the button in 3, 2, 1.
We've only just begun to podcast called Totem Talks.
That was very beautiful.
There's no other line. That's it.
I
got
loved
podcast Totem Talks. We're done.
It was nice.
Thank
And
you.
not at all necessarily what we caught in our coverage this week, which it's
I
good
wanted
to expand a little.
Exactly. I figured the way we went, we didn't get arguably the biggest hit. Arguably.
I wasn't thinking that one at all when I thought the biggest hit.
Some people would consider it, according to my research this week.
I was thinking
I
of
also
something
wasn't thinking of it as
totally
the
different.
biggest.
Probably
Correct.
on the same album. Probably the album was named after the one I was thinking of.
You and I would completely agree.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of Totem Talks. This is Season 7, Episode 10, where we are asking the hard-hitting questions.
That's so true.
Such as, what's the better job? I know we got to do a better job. And what is the better job? And that's it.
Wow.
But
Real
during
throwback
our
reference there.
real Philly sports amazing throwback reference that if you get, I want to be your friend. And the fact that you got it, Nick, is why we're friends.
That's
honestly, that's the only reason. It was really hanging on by a thread there,
Yeah.
and then you got that
yeah.
reference, and it solidified the
Absolutely.
bond. But while we're asking the better job question, we are also continuing our soul-smiting adventure of determining the best musical artist or act or band of all time.
Correct.
And today we get to ask the question again. Did we do it?
I won't spoil it, even though I like to spoil it. The answer
You
is
love
no.
you love to spoil it.
I do. But I'll tell you who we covered this week, and we're going to be kicking things off with, I would say, arguably one of the most common jobs for a person to have, which is Night Ranger. followed by a far less common job, but still, you probably know someone who has this one, which is carpenters.
I can think of one carpenter.
I'm not getting that reference at all. I don't. Was there something on your chest? Or are you scratching?
For those of you audio listeners, I gave the sign of the cross because Jesus was a carpenter.
Oh,
It doesn't play as well in audio format
you
when you
don't
do
say.
physical bits like that, so you have to really
Don't say.
painstakingly explain them afterwards.
Makes for great radio.
Oh, 100%. Nick, I could tell a joke and then spend 10 minutes explaining it at least twice in a row before I end the podcast.
Oh my God, will you just tell us about Night Ranger?
Yeah, why not? Why not? So let's get it started with Night Ranger. Night Ranger is an American hard rock band from San Francisco, formed in 1979 and then still active today, with a brief hiatus from 1989 to 1991. We covered 3 albums, as we do. We started with Dawn Patrol, which came out in 1982. We followed it up with Midnight Madness from 1983. And then we closed things out with the very simply named ATBPO, which came out in 2021.
That's right.
And Nick, this was your group. Why don't you get us started?
So here we go, Dawn Patrol. So the first thing that I think is actually interesting about this as their first album is their name was just Ranger. And they started making a bunch of copies of this record. And then they found out about another band that was named Ranger. And so they're like, what do we do?
That
And
is
so
not
they,
the first time we've run
no,
into that.
I know. So they added Night to their name and then repressed the album. So there you go. That's kind of interesting. And here's what I heard on this record. It was never at any point unpleasant to listen to. The playing was good. I think even though it is like a hard rock metal adjacent album, it's like the poppiest version of that. And the pop songwriting isn't bad. Like you get catchy hooks, you get decent parts. Um, like I have a hard time pointing out the flaws in this album, other than that, like I don't really care for pop metal. You know what I mean? Like it was all the elements of a good album were there in terms of the talent and the pop sensibilities as far as songwriting goes. But like I'm just really not interested in listening to a pop metal album from the early 1980s. So I'm like, I never at any point like hated listening to this album, but I'm not gonna listen to it again.
I gotta say, we are remarkably similar. I have a little bit of a metaphor for this that I'll talk about in a
Sure.
second. But I agree with a lot of what you're saying. This album is very 80s. So it's definitely a taste that you will recognize immediately. If you like 80s hard rock, towing that metal line but in a poppy way,
Yeah.
I think you'll enjoy this album. I didn't hate this album. I do have to say we are coming up against potentially one of the top names. Always good to have a good name, and this is a simple one. We got a guy called Jack Blades,
Sure. Yeah.
and that's pretty awesome. Want to give
Great
credit
point.
where credit is due to Jack Blades. This album, and I'm gonna just combine it because I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I'll go into Midnight Madness here at the same time. These albums for me are interesting because I enjoy a lot of the individual aspects. I think the singing is done well, and I think it's there's multiple lead vocals. You have Blades and Keegi,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they're both doing good work.
Yep.
I think you're getting like interesting riffs. I think you're getting a good mix of the rock and the metal sound, and the pop mixed in like a little spattering on top of it. But it's like when you go to a restaurant and you read a food item on the menu and you're like, that sounds delicious. And then there's something in it, whether it's like cilantro you weren't expecting and you're one of the soap people.
Uh,
Something in it that you can't quite put your finger on and you're like, for some reason, I don't enjoy this like I thought I would. And that is exactly what Night Ranger is doing to me. I can't put an exact finger on what aspect of the songwriting or performance is just not doing it for me, but there's definitely some ingredient in here that is souring me a little bit.
It's so funny because I also used a food metaphor to explain similar feelings for my review of the second album. So
Yeah.
go figure.
So good. I'm excited to hear it. But for this, I mean, obviously on Midnight Madness you get Sister Christian, which is the big Night Ranger
Yeah.
song. It's the enduring hit from Night Ranger's career, and I'll tell you what. Listening to all of this album, Sister Christian did not stick out to me.
Sure.
Like it stuck out to me in terms of recognizability,
Definitely.
but it did not stick out to me like some other one hit wonder songs jump out of their album.
Hmm.
And I wonder if the overall kind of added ingredient that we're not loving may have been what sort of held Night Ranger back from like overarching success across multiple albums
Maybe.
and instead limited them to kind of the one hit wonder status that they're in.
Well, here's what I was thinking when I listened to the second album. And I did it directly after the first one. And what I found myself doing was constantly checking to see if the albums had changed because there was no
Yeah.
way I would have known on my own. Like, wait a minute, is this the new one? No, oh no, okay, wait, it is the new one. How long have we been listening to the new one? Like they blended right into each other. Um, and some of the good things I think remain in terms of performances. I mean, the guitar playing is really good on these records as well. But it's sort of like, I guess to me, Night Ranger is like the world's best American cheese sandwich on white bread. And like, if you like American cheese and plain white bread, then maybe you'll enjoy it. But it's not going to be like unique or spectacular, even if you enjoy it. I
Yeah.
personally don't like American cheese or white bread really. So like while I can recognize that maybe it's doing it really well compared to, like it's not necessarily a craft single
Right.
on there, but like no, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, you need some cheddar, some Cooper Sharp, some
It's
focaccia bread.
something.
I get it.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
exactly. Exactly. So that's what Night Ranger is. Going into this last album, at Popo. Also an acronym for "and the band played on." And
Sure, sure.
this was the album where I was finally like, they are at least like a 2 to 3 trick pony now instead of just a one trick pony. This album felt like a little harder edged at times. This album felt like they were dipping into like southerner country rock influences at times. And I was like, oh, well, it's nice to hear something other than power ballad pop metal on every song. Um, so like for that reason, it's probably the best of the three for me. I mean the musicianship didn't really fall off. The voices have aged and they're not as good, but every other element of the music is really good. Um, it I think it's their best album. I felt like maybe it's influenced because so much time has passed and there's been a lot of changes in hard rock music from the 80s pop metal through. And the influence I hear on here, aside from Southern rock, is almost like they heard a lot of what Dave Grohl has been up to.
Sure.
And they were like, oh, yeah, we can take hard rock from that perspective and try to make something work. So, again, I'm probably not going to revisit it. But if I had to pick a Night Ranger album to listen to again, it would be this one.
Understood, understood. Here's my take on this. I agree with some of the fundamental things you're saying. It's unarguably different from the previous two albums. It shakes up that there's really no pop or metal involved anymore. It's more pure rock and or hard rock than it was previously. However, the country, like southern rock influence, was not limited to like the sonic music sound, and it created some of the blandest vocals or lyrics that I've heard from them and in this genre in a long time. It just felt super inauthentic
Sure.
lyrically,
Sure.
which was a struggle for me because it is rare that I'll have a band that primarily saw success in the 80s and think their later work was what was inauthentic. And that's kind of what happened here. It just felt like the lyrics were simplified, and it created this annoyance in me where I was like, okay, I mean, I want to like what you're doing for the same reasons you said. It was like a sip of water in a land of Coca-Cola. Like
Yeah.
everything was just kind of fizzy and boring previously, and a little, oh, I couldn't really put a finger on it. And this album I liked more, but could put a finger on what I didn't like. So
Yeah.
it
Sure.
created a little bit of annoyance in me. Although I do agree it's probably the strongest of the three albums. If you're
Okay.
not somebody who actively listens to lyrics, which
Yeah.
the more I do this and the more I talk music with people, the more I find that those people exist and are everywhere. I've always been a person who listens to lyrics the first time I listen to a song, and like, I
Okay.
guess that's because I'm a singer. So like I listen to the melody of the track, and that's usually lyrical.
Hmm.
So many people just don't listen to lyrics at all. Like that was like
I'll
I had
get
a
to them.
long conversation with Alex about that.
Yeah.
Alex, the bass player of our band, because and former host of this podcast.
Sure.
That was a while ago. Um, where he just like really doesn't listen to lyrics until like the fifth or sixth time he's heard a song, and I'm like,
Sure.
I can't understand that process. But like, if that's who you are, you'll probably like this album. I really do think that it's
Mhm.
sonically better than the other two.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And here we go. Some information about Night Ranger. This, the only thing that was difficult for me was coming up with something that was unique about them, which kind of goes hand in hand um, with all the exact critiques
Yeah.
that we made of the group. So here is the thing that I think is most unique, which is every original member of this group is like a clear 6th degree.
Wow.
So like there's no one who played in Night Ranger that I cannot also connect to other musicians we've covered on the podcast that hasn't played in bands with them. So for instance, for a couple of the guys, the band's actual origin was in a group called Rubicon,
Yes.
and that was Jack Blades and Gillis. What's his first name? Brad Gillis.
Brad Gillis.
Yeah, so they were playing behind Jerry Martini, who was one of the original members of Sly and the Family Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they met Kelly Keegy, who was like the touring drummer for that band. So all three of them um, were playing in that band when they ended up forming Ranger and then in Night Ranger. So they're
Yeah.
all connected that way. And actually, another guy in that band, the other guitarist, Johnny uh, Cola, um, ended up being one of the people who formed Huey Lewis and the News.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, but I mean, I could go look at the other guys, um, and like everyone is in some way connected. Like the other original guitarist, Jeff Watson, also played with the Michael Schenker group, and we just talked about Michael Schenker being a part of the first album with
Yeah.
Scorpions earlier this season. Like um, Alan Fitzgerald on the keyboards. If you look at his discography, like he's played with Van Halen and Sammy Hagar. So like there's another group that we've covered on the show. I could look into people who have replaced these members as the band has moved on, and pretty much all of them at some point were involved with uh, some other group we've covered. Like for instance, they brought in a guy, Gary Moon, to replace Jack Blades as their vocalist bassist, and he used to be in Three Dog Night. So like I just reading their entire like year by year breakdown on the wiki page. It's like, oh, and then this is how they were connected to Whitesnake, and here's how they were connected to Mick Jones from Foreigner, and here's how they were connected to Ozzy Osbourne, and here's how they're connected to Alice Cooper and Rat and Tal Bachman. And it's like, okay, so every artist we've ever covered is in some way like had a musician go in and out.
That is super
So
interesting.
there you go. There's your unique and 6 Degrees.
Yeah.
The highlight is obviously Sister Christian, because what else could it be?
Yeah.
It was by their highest charting single, number 5, hit number 1 in Canada. It is number 32 on VH1's 100 Greatest Songs of the 80s. I don't know if you remember watching all those countdown shows on VH1 in the 2000s, but I certainly do.
Absolutely.
And that is how I first heard of this song, amongst many others, like watching shows like that. They also, as to go hand in hand with that, I can say they had 5 different songs make movie soundtracks in the 80s. So that kind of helped with their popularity a little bit. As far as lowlights, a little bit difficult here. There wasn't necessarily anything too terrible. They did go on hiatus for a short time between 89 and 91 while all the members kind of pursued different projects. I sort of was looking into one of the Rolling Stone reviews for their album, 7 Wishes, which was the one that came out right after Midnight Madness, riding on the coattails of Sister Christian. And they referred to all their songs as formulaic sub-Broadway ballads.
Jesus.
It's like, yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't feel like an entirely wrong thing to say, though.
No, I get it. I get it.
But yeah, so that's it. And then for meanest and nicest things, I have found interesting things. So one, just last year there was an article about how they were headlining a United by Sacrifice benefit. So what that's, there's like a big veterans memorial that all the money first goes to maintaining the veterans memorial, and then everything that's left over gets sent to schools, women's shelters, children's shelters, and veterans homes. So that's cool that they were playing that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And they also did do like a performance for the troops back in 2008. But, and now I don't know anything about this performance, so.
Okay.
Don't hold me to anything. But it was at Guantanamo Bay. So I don't know if this was like a performance for the troops who were stationed there, or if this was a performance for the specialists.
I would assume it was for the troops.
Yeah.
It feels like
as,
it was
as
for
soon
the
as
troops.
as soon as I see Gitmo connection, I start to get a little bit more questioning.
Okay, I understand.
And now here's one other thing which I thought was kind of hilarious, and I'm not sure how it fits in the meanest or nicest, or if it's both. But I found this article, essentially on. It's titled "When Night Ranger Pissed the Crap Out of Prince at the AMAs," and it was in 1985 at the American Music Awards, where Night Ranger were the presenters for Album of the Year. And basically everybody knew already at the time that Purple Rain was going to be the winner. It was, it was assumed. So they get a letter from Prince's management team, essentially saying, okay, we understand that Night Ranger are going to be the presenters of the Album of the Year, and the possibility that Prince's Purple Rain will be that record is very high. We want to inform you that in no way should Jack Blades or Kelly Keagy speak to Prince or touch Prince or in any way acknowledge him whatsoever.
Oh, man.
So they get that letter from Prince, and they're all like, well, we're definitely going to do all those things now. So they were seated right behind Prince at the show, and they just went out of their way to interact with him as much as they could, and they like kept leaning over and tapping him on the shoulder and talking to him. And
Just not a smart thing to say or do.
I know, but like also, come on, Prince, what are we doing here? Like,
No,
I just want
I'm
you to
talking
know to
from
not
the
touch
Prince
or look
point of
at
view.
me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's where it's not a smart thing to do.
So they Purple Rain obviously wins. They're on stage to give him the award, and they know they're not supposed to say anything, but they say, way to go, good job. What do you think? And he was very upset, I guess, about this in some way. However, 2 decades later, at the Polestar Awards, Night Ranger was again presenting an award that went to Prince for his tour that year.
Yeah.
And upon presenting it, what he's saying to Prince, it's crazy. 20 years ago, we gave you the American Music Award for the best album, and here we are 20 years later. 20 years have gone by, and you're getting the award for best tour. And Prince turned around and said, "Yeah, man, sometimes it feels like it's been 20 days, doesn't it?"
So Prince mellowed.
That's the impression that I'm getting is Prince mellowed on that, and he gets his little redemption arc at the end.
Good. That's good. I'm glad. Rest in peace, Prince. But
indeed.
Right.
Anyway, it's time to move on to Carpenters and to pee.
Of course, I would expect nothing less. Hey Keith, I did see you, by the way. We were just already rolling. We were rock rolling through this. Oh, welcome back. Now, welcome back.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
I agree. Alrighty, indeed.
Oh, the Carpenters. I wish we could find out how good they were as carpenters.
Honestly, it would make a difference.
Seriously. We never found out how good the Night Rangers were at being Night Rangers.
Yeah, that's true. Missed opportunity.
Although, you know what's great? The stars really align, because if you're going for a job, right? And somebody already has the day version of that job, you do just get shoved to the night shift.
Yeah.
Like, Night Ranger proves that happens everywhere.
That's a great
There was a band called Ranger. They were like, screw it. We're on the night shift. We're Night Ranger.
Yeah.
So there's a band somewhere called the Night Carpenters. They have to exist.
I hope so.
I just want there to be the carpenters of every time of day.
Yeah.
The morning carpenters, the noon carpenters, the dusk carpenters.
And it doesn't even have to just be carpenters. I mean, you can do anything at all different times of day.
It's true. It's true. Well, I feel like there's certain, like, you don't want to be like, I'm trying to think of a good one. You don't want to be like a crossing guard, like a night crossing guard.
Are you sure?
Schools aren't out. Schools don't go that late.
Yeah, but I mean, less work for you to do. You're there in case. But you'll
You're
probably
there
not be
just.
that busy.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. You know what? I don't know what I was thinking, honestly.
Not much, honestly.
That's normal. That's my brain.
If it could be called that.
All right.
That you're ready?
I think I'm ready to go.
Excellent. Me too.
Okay.
3.
The Carpenters, also officially known as Carpenters, were an American vocal and instrumental duo consisting of siblings Karen and Richard Carpenter. They were active from 1965 to 1983. And the three albums we covered were Offering, which was retitled as Ticket to Ride, which was initially released in 1969. Followed it up with The Eponymous Carpenters, which came out in 1971. And then we wrapped things up with, after some discussion, Voice of the Heart from 1983.
Yeah.
And those are the three. I'll start it off. So, Offering, which I found as Ticket to Ride. I'm assuming you found as Ticket to
Correct.
Ride.
Yes.
It was, excuse me. It was a very interesting album for me to listen to. I was familiar with some Carpenter songs. I want to say "How Can You Not Be," although I'm sure there's people who aren't.
Sure.
But they've existed for quite some time. They were very popular, so I've heard a few songs. I I did hear their cover of Ticket to Ride before,
Oh, okay.
and I remember really enjoying it, and I still really enjoy it. It's it's interesting with the dynamic of this group because they toe that line between like almost like saccharine sweet, but they use like interesting harmonies and interesting lyrics and things to kind of shake it up a little bit. And I really enjoyed the makeup of this album. It felt a little dated in terms of like I could almost peg the year this had come out, like in that mid to late 60s realm vocal group, but it was still very enjoyable. Karen Carpenter is a phenomenal vocalist.
She is.
She has that like pure resonant alto voice that you so rarely get to hear in successful music. Like so often people go for like high mezzo soprano or things like that, or like just power pop. But when you have like an incredible alto voice and you really lean into it, it creates such a depth. There's something really interesting about somebody singing in like what could be considered like the high tenor range for a man,
Sure.
but as a woman you hear it, it's so much more resonant and deep in the chest
It is.
than like me as a tenor. I can't get that deep in the chest up there because it's high for
Yeah.
me. It just creates such an interesting sound.
Yeah. Totally.
And then added into the fact that Karen Carpenter's also a very good drummer,
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
and Richard Carpenter's no slouch on what he's doing as well. He's got some lead and backing vocals on this album. Plays the piano. It's an album of exceeding my expectation, we'll say.
Okay.
And the big exceeding of my expectation was that Richard Carpenter wrote most of these songs,
Right.
which for a vocal duo in the '60s is rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Um, I have mostly similar feelings to you. I really enjoyed the opening and closing of this album, the Invocation and Benediction, like truly beautiful compositions. Um, I also really enjoyed their cover of Ticket to Ride.
Yeah.
I thought I don't know if I definitely don't prefer it to the original, but I was
Oh, no.
interested in their cover of Get Together by the Youngbloods.
Okay.
It was weird. It sounded like Richard Carpenter's vocals were like going through a Leslie or something for a lot of that song. Like they were like really
Sure.
Uh,
That
I don't know how else to describe it other than it sounded like it had that like
I
Leslie
mean, he's
spinning speaker
credited with the
sound.
harpsichord and the Wurlitzer. I don't. I
Yeah, but I mean
mean,
on his voice, I'm saying.
yeah, I'm not seeing anything specific for
Well,
that.
I don't know that they would write that. They just say he did
You
vocals.
know, man, maybe they would have. Maybe
I
they
mean, I
would. You
don't
don't
like
know.
credit every pedal I use when I'm. All right.
Well, maybe
Anyway,
you should.
maybe I should. Anyway, I thought this was a perpetually interesting album. Um, like there was never a song that didn't have something to latch onto,
Sure.
something to like really catch and hold your attention. It did drift into that like overly saccharine to me
Yeah,
though. Like
it towed the
like
lines for sure.
yeah, it was really towing that line, and it was on the wrong side of the line at times, but it was interesting enough that it wasn't like pushing me away. Um, so there's that. And then we get to Carpenters. And finally we hit a song that I recognized by the Carpenters, which was Rainy Days and Mondays.
Yeah.
Um, which was, I think, of the three albums that we covered, the only time I knew their version of a song. For whatever
That's fair.
it's worth. And it's an excellent song, Rainy Days and Mondays. I think this album, compared to the first, it is way less overtly theatrical, and it feels more like that mid '60s Baroque pop flavor of composition, where it feels like, you know, uh, a rock band doing Baroque pop arrangements instead of like songs that were written for like a musical film. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because there's definitely some of that in their first album. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think overall this one was like a way stronger uh, record for me. I really like harmony being used as an instrument. I really like the harpsichord on the song Drusilla Penny. Um, and the transitions between songs on this record were really, really good too.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying here. I was a little worried about this album because I'd already started to do my fact finding for,
Hmm.
my little blurb after this, and I saw how busy they'd gotten by this point.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk more about it, but their touring schedule was insane for the time. And this album consists of less writing by Richard Carpenter. So
Okay.
Richard
Yeah.
Carpenter and then John Bettis also wrote on the
Hmm.
first album. They wrote as a duo on the first album, and they continue to write as a duo here, John Bettis and Richard Carpenter. But there's fewer songs from them, and you get more guest writers or writing for them, including Rainy Days and Mondays was written by Roger Nichols and Paul Williams. A Six Degrees that I almost used, one of their sneakier successful songs, Superstar, which I feel like is very good, but didn't necessarily achieve the mainstream levels I've heard. Although it's by far, if you look up covers of Carpenter songs, it's the one everybody covers,
Interesting.
which is, yes, it is interesting. But it was written by Leon Russell. He was a co-writer on it with Bobby
There you go.
Bramlett. So it was a 6 degrees I could have used. I ended up using something else, but I wanted to bring it up here. But going back to my point, I was a little concerned about the fact that they were less included in the writing, specifically Richard
Yeah.
Carpenter's less included in the writing. But I agree with you. This album, not only was it stronger overall, it felt more cohesive than I was expecting. Whether that's working with the transitions, as you mentioned, the
Hmm.
fact that the songs dabbled in other areas, but held together by that like Carpenter chemistry
Sure.
and like Karen's voice with all the instruments and Richard, tuning in with his voice as well at times. It felt really clean and cohesive, and I was very appreciative of that because more often than not, I feel like we've had a group where other writers come in and just muck it up and it's
Sure.
yucky.
Hmm.
But for them, they held their own, and I was really happy to hear it. It sounds great. The harmonies that they go for, the blending of their voice. I don't know if it's because they're siblings and like there's some type of like sibilance in their voice and
Hmm.
similarity that just creates these resonant harmonies so well.
Yeah.
But there's something here clearly where
Hmm.
they are tuned to each other's voice to a level that doesn't always happen, even in the best of
I
harmonic
agree.
groups. And then I'll go into Voice of the Heart. So, Voice of the Heart is a bittersweet album for sure. So, Karen Carpenter unfortunately passes away kind of during the production of this album, which is why we included. It's not technically the last Carpenter's album, but the other ones that preceded this were compilations from old
Hmm.
recordings. This is the last album Karen Carpenter directly contributed to,
Okay.
with the knowledge that it was contributing to an album.
Gotcha.
And it starts off with "Now," which is actually the last song she ever recorded. She was in medical treatment in New York and came back and recorded the song in one take. Just came down, laid the vocals, and then left. Which I know of one other artist who did that. But when they were sick, they got out of the hospital to record a couple songs from an album in like one take, maybe two takes, and that was Freddie Mercury
Yeah.
did that. But yeah, so we'll discuss more about Karen Carpenter's untimely passing in my facts, of course. But
Of
it
course.
was definitely a rain cloud over this album. But going into the album itself, you still get a ton of the positives of the group. Their harmonies are still, really cohesive and clean. The sound has shifted once again, I think, into more of a pure pop for the time. It's not quite 80s pop in its sound. It's still more 70s pop. So it's maybe a little later than the time. However, that's a good thing for me, and I think it's a good thing for you. I know you're not going to give your opinion yet, but I know that we both typically approve of 70s pop over 80s pop.
Well, I mean,
I'm just saying, that's what I felt, and I felt like this was a strong album to go out on. You do unfortunately get even less writing.
yeah.
I mean, this one is 3 tracks, but they're shorter and they're more spread out. With the Bettis and Richard Carpenter
Hmm.
team. So it's a good album. It's strong. Karen Carpenter still sounds wonderful, even until the very end. And I enjoyed all 3 Carpenter's albums.
Okay. So when I was comparing the first two records, I kind of made the point that the second one, uh, for me, got a lot stronger because it sounded like a rock group doing Baroque pop orchestrations
Yeah.
instead of music that was written like by theater people for like a musical film.
Uh huh.
This album sounded like it should have been a musical film from the late 60s, early 70s. It didn't sound anything like a rock band. It was so overly saccharine that I was getting sick from it.
That's fair.
It was like replacing every meal that you eat with just solid sugar. Every item is just a giant sugar cube. Like I could never listen to
Interesting.
that album recreationally.
Yeah.
I'll go back and listen to Carpenters again, but God, I will never listen to a single track from this album again. It was no, like it's a big no for me. I'm
I
sorry.
wonder if the knowledge that this was like a posthumous album and like the circumstances of Karen's death and stuff like sucked the sweetness out for me. So I wasn't
I
even leaning
mean,
into
maybe,
that.
but musically, that's
I guess I was just
all
full of the melancholy of the actual
maybe.
time.
Yeah,
And
maybe it
so
helped.
maybe it just came across less overbearingly sweet to me.
Yeah, no, I couldn't handle it.
I get it. I respect your opinion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Cool. I guess it's
Yeah.
time for me
Um,
to talk about some
Please.
stuff. All right. So a pretty easy first thing here, but I wasn't quite sure what else to say. they're a sibling vocal duo, which I feel
Not
like it's pretty
not
rare.
often.
We've had
Yeah.
siblings in groups before.
Yeah,
We,
that's
so
not
that's less
uncommon.
rare. But just the fact that they are the group, it's just the two of
Hmm.
them. I thought that was a rather unique
It's
situation.
the first time we've gotten that since Hanson.
Bop it up, bop it up, my guy.
Ugh.
Anyway, back to the task at hand here. The highlight for them, I went with 70, 71, the years. So like late 70 into 1971. So some things that happened in that time. They won two of their three total Grammys, as well as released their breakthrough album "Close to You." So "Close to
Hmm.
You" was their Grammy Golden Goose, the single and the album.
Yeah.
It was also one of the last years where their touring schedule was jam packed, but had not yet started to affect them personally,
Okay.
which I would consider a highlight because you're getting 145 concerts that year, as
Okay.
well as 10 different TV appearances. So they were busy, busy,
That's
busy
busy.
people.
Yeah.
But the negatives of their touring schedule, so they continue that pace for the next 5 or 6 years without a break, and they're recording albums, which is why
Yeah.
they contributed less to the writing. They're basically constantly touring.
Yeah.
And then Richard Carpenter and John Bettis are writing a handful of songs for an album. Then they're like flying back to California, recording it in like a month or two,
Hmm.
back out on the road.
Yeah.
So this, of course, contributed to the low light, which was Karen starting to really struggle with anorexia nervosa,
Yeah.
which unfortunately was heavily contributed to her passing. So for years she struggled with her weight. She started taking multiple supplements to just kind of drop weight. She went, I think, what my reading said, she went as low as 67 pounds at one point. And she did eventually recover from anorexia nervosa in terms of she started to put on weight again.
Mm.
She eventually went into a rehab, and but the damage to her heart was too
Yeah.
much, and unfortunately that contributed to her passing away. Also during that time, Richard Carpenter developed a Quaalude addiction, due to his, overwork and overstress from the
Hmm.
road. His mother actually gave him a Quaalude to calm him down one time, and it started the slippery slope towards a Quaalude addiction,
Right.
which he did eventually seek help for and recover from.
Very good.
But a couple lowlights there, Karen being the big one, of
Yeah.
course. The passing of Karen Carpenter broke up the band. Obviously, it was half the
Right.
band. Very sad. So going into nicest things, we have a couple. So the family did start the Karen Carpenter Memorial Foundation, for research and help for people who struggle with
Sure.
anorexia or other eating disorders. There was also the Carpenter Family Foundation, which I couldn't necessarily find if the Karen Carpenter Memorial Foundation kind of melded into this. But the Carpenter Family Foundation benefits a wide range of charities. They kind of collect a pool of funds and then distribute it to worthy
Okay.
charities. Richard Carpenter himself was also a founder and the prime benefactor of the Richard and Karen Carpenter Performing Arts Center, at Cal State University at Long Beach, which was their alma mater.
Okay.
So a couple different good things there.
Sure.
Meanest, I struggled to find anything.
Well, that's good.
Everything I've seen about them is, everything about them was saccharine sweet.
Sure.
However, I do have one quick thing, which I don't think is a mean thing, but is technically the only thing I could find. Richard eventually did come out and publicly criticize both the label and almost every critic, just the critics in general, for making their entire career and early career especially about that sickly sweet, like American dream image.
Mm.
Because the label definitely put that on them.
Sure.
Like
Right.
they were like, "You're going to tour all the time. You're going to be goody two shoes. You're going to be, you're going to be
Sure.
everybody's dream American, basically. And that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
the image. And neither one of them really liked that, but it was causing them to be very successful.
Right.
And the critics almost exclusively like lambasted them
Sure.
for that, and we're just like, it's blah blah blah, it's awful, it's terrible. And Richard Carpenter basically was just like, it's nothing that people liked or hated us for in the early times was about our music, and he was very against that.
Mm.
So it was one time where he publicly came out and was mean, but I fully support it, so it's hard for me to be like
Yeah.
it was mean.
I mean, I get where he's coming from. It's
I get
hard to fault
exactly
the
where he's
man for
coming
feeling
from.
that way.
Yeah. So one other like little highlight, not highlight because it's so hard to say, but
It's just a light.
it's just a light, and it is just a light because Karen's passing is one of the things that really started to shine a public light on the dangers of anorexia
Sure.
and
Yeah.
other eating disorders, which still, like, the dangers of them still persist to this day, but there is much more of a lens on them at this point and much more pathways to
Yeah.
help than existed back in those days. So, you know, Karen's death, while tragic, did start that conversation that
Yeah.
needed to happen to
Right.
kind of push things forward in that field. And now in 6 degrees, so I skipped over the Leon Russell thing. I mentioned it in the album review.
Yeah.
So what am I gonna pick? And it's pretty simple. In 1994, an album, If I Were a Carpenter, was released, which was a tribute album to the Carpenters. And it included such acts as Sonic Youth, who ruined the song Superstar on that album. Not a fan of Sonic Youth. Didn't like Sonic Youth when we covered them.
No, no.
Certainly didn't like Sonic Youth covering arguably Karen Carpenter's best vocal and
Yeah.
just ruining it. But they
Yeah.
did do it on this album. They also have "Close to You" or "They Long to Be Close to You," the
Cranberries.
song by the Cranberries.
I love that version.
That version is great. They have Sheryl Crow singing "Solitaire." Sheryl Crow singing "Solitaire" for me was super interesting because Sheryl Crow is another powerful alto singer. Very different genre,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
impressive nonetheless. And then we also had Matthew Sweet and Four Non Blondes on
Yeah.
this album.
How about that?
So a chunk of Totem Talks alum
Yeah.
on this album had to go with it.
I dig it.
And that's what I've got. Those are
All right.
my contributions and facts about the Carpenters. Yeah, is that happening? You can hear it.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah, I don't know what's
That's
going
fine.
on out there.
Oh well. It'll be fine.
Someone's cooking something,
Yeah.
and there's only one other person in the place.
Oh, it's funny. I was thinking that was a truck outside.
It may have been. I don't know. I think it was a smoke alarm.
Oh, that makes sense too. Glad you're not dead.
I
Anyway,
don't see any fire, so I think I'm good.
so let's talk cultural impact scores.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will say this: Night Ranger, I think, is going to get more than 1 point for Sister Christian. Mostly because while that is the one song that anyone who didn't live through the 80s remembers, it is not their only single that charted in the top 40 or anything like that. I mean, they had a string of top 20 hits: When You
Yeah.
Close Your Eyes, Sentimental Street, 4 in the Morning, Goodbye. Those are all songs that I've never heard before, but they were all top 20 hits. So, you know, that's significant to have, I would say. If
Yeah.
you go by top 40s, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 top 40 hits. Um,
6 top 40 hits at the time, one enduring hit.
Yeah.
I'm not against giving them a little more than just a one. It's the
Yeah.
question is how high do you want to go?
I mean, I'm leaning closer to the twos, honestly, once I counted how many hits it actually was.
Okay.
Like, I give them a 1.8.
A 1.8. After some consideration with my team, I will accept a 1.8.
Okay, very good. I was gonna say it would be tough not to with that many.
No,
Like,
I
that's
think- I
setting a
think that
high
makes
bar
sense.
for hit songs.
I think that's good.
All right, Carpenters. Where do you want to start us out here?
So here's the thing. In terms of like overarching legacy, in terms of influence, they're very significant. They have a number of hits. They have a ton of sales.
Totally.
They have two songs in the Grammy Hall of Fame, which is "We've Only Just Begun" and "They Long to Be
Hmm.
Close to You."
Sure.
A lot of artists have considered them an influence. A lot of artists that we've covered. Some art, so the
Is
Cranberries,
it throwing you
and
off?
it's throwing me off a little bit, but it's okay. So a lot of people have mentioned them as an enduring influence, and all the way up until the 2023 Academy Awards,
Hmm.
they were called a direct influence by M.M. Kiravani. He mentioned that he grew up listening to them
Oh,
in his
yes.
speech during the 2023 Academy Awards. So they have an
Right.
enduring influence and legacy.
Was that a name I was supposed to recognize?
He's a musician. He's an indie musician. He won an award at the
I believe you.
2023 Academy Awards.
Okay.
So
And what are the Academy Awards for again?
they are for academies, like schools.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
what I needed to
you
hear.
win an Academy Award if you have like a
An
educational
academy.
academy,
Yeah.
an
Okay.
academy. Yes.
Sure. All right. That makes sense. Okay. Well, how many points is all this worth to you?
I would say that it's probably worth somewhere in the realm of over a five.
Yeah, I
I
think
would
so.
be honest.
Over a
Over a
five, I think
five,
is
I
right.
would be leaning closer to like a five and a half. I think the Carpenters are
Sure.
roughly in that range.
I have no problem giving it to him if you would like that.
I love it. Let's give them a five and a half.
Five and a half. All right. Now, both of these artists are going to start out with a 5.8 for Breath of Work for 12 and 14 studio albums, respectively. So then it's all going to come down to sales. Night Ranger has 17 million worldwide. So I think they got to get like a solid point two there.
Sure,
Um, and then I will leave their score totally alone from there.
I will also.
Fair enough.
I won't touch it. I think there was pretty positive moments and negative moments on both sides
Hmm.
of their discography. So
It just
leaving
is
it
what it
where it
is.
is.
And the Carpenters have apparently like 100 million in sales worldwide.
Yeah,
So
they're between 90 million and 100 million in total sales. They're some of the best selling artists of all time. They're in
so
that realm.
so
So
that's
they're,
closing in on a full point.
yeah, well, 100 million would be a full point. So they already have the multi platinum status, which erase any type of potential
Yeah.
downward. So then you add on top of that the number of platinum and multi platinum, and then on top of that the total units sold. I think adding a full point makes sense to
Yeah,
me.
I'm already there. So then it becomes what would you like to do to their score in terms of how much you liked it?
So I liked all three albums. I'm much more open and
Saccharine.
willing for the theatrical than
Yeah.
you in music, and I am aware of that. I'm gonna give them a point three. I really enjoyed listening to them. I thought the harmonies and instruments were very strong throughout.
I'll give them point one.
That's fair.
That's what they get for me. Which brings us to instrumental talent. And look, I mean, you're you're looking at two extremely different groups here.
Yeah.
But I think we're obviously looking at two groups that are going to be scoring above average for
Yeah,
just
I
very
would
different
agree.
reasons. But like instrumentally, it's gonna be Night Ranger pretty hands down. Vocally, I think Karen Carpenter is definitely the best singer we heard of all of them. But every singer that we listened to this week was also above average too. Um, so my overall score, just because I heard more from everything besides vocals in Night Ranger, is probably going to give them a little bit of the edge, but they're still going to be good scores.
Yeah, although it's not like let's not discount the number of instruments that were touched by the actual carpenters.
Sure.
Like that is an impressive part of this to
Yeah,
me.
that's true.
So I mean, you do have Karen Carpenter doing drums and electric bass during the
Okay.
first album. You have Richard
Okay, I'm glad that
Carpenter
she
on
is
the
playing
Wurlitzer and
drums
the
on that too, because
harpsichord.
yeah, she is a really good drummer.
Yeah. So just just things to add.
That's true.
So it's I feel like it makes their scores a lot closer than maybe you'd think.
I didn't think they were far. Um,
Yeah. I meant to. I'm not you. I meant you as in
yeah.
our
And
listeners.
I think they're in the sixes.
I would agree. I would agree that they should both be in the sixes. I think Karen Carpenter's voice is so tonally unique.
Yeah, it is.
It's again, I mentioned it when we were listening to it. It's so tonally unique. You can kind of almost instantly tell. In a world where higher pop is better pop to the masses,
Hmm.
Karen Carpenter showed that that's not necessarily true. You
Sure.
can sing. It's about the tone.
Yeah.
It's about the power of your voice,
Sure.
which I appreciate.
Okay.
And in terms of Night Ranger, multiple good singers,
Yeah,
not great but good,
and some really good guitar work on all
and
their
some
albums
good
as well.
guitar work and good
Good piano
overall
playing.
sound.
Yeah. Um, I'm like a 6.4, 6.3. Like those could be the two scores here.
You know what? Let's do it. A 6-4 for Night Ranger, a 6-3 for the Carpenters, and we'll move on.
Songwriting. I think you have two different problems, but you
Yes.
have problems with each group,
Sure.
which is for the Carpenters, it's after that first album, not really writing more than like a couple co-writes per
Right, yeah.
album.
A handful of co-writes.
And then if you're,
Although, to be fair, co-writes, but it is always the same person. So it's always John
yeah,
Bettis and
it
Richard
is always
Carpenter
right.
together. It's not like we've had in other pop groups where it's like the pop artist will just throw their name on a song with a bunch of ghostwriters.
Yeah.
That's not what's happening here. It's
The
a
problem
duo of
is,
songwriters.
yeah, I mean, the problem is really that you get into like anywhere between like 1 and 5 of those per album as I just like
Yeah,
clicked
for
through a
sure.
couple of their other albums in their discography. So it's not a lot. And for Night Ranger, their problem is that their first two albums, and basically, I'm sure everything else that they did throughout the 1980s, sounds exactly the same. It is, as Rolling Stone put it, not so subtly, formulaic sub Broadway ballads over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's
So
and even when they
they're
when they
well
get
constructed.
to
They're well
yeah,
constructed, but they are the same over and over and over again.
a bit repetitive.
Yeah. So
And even
I'm
when they get to the third album where they kind of mix it up a little bit,
yeah.
there are other issues.
Yeah, so I'm in like the fours for Night Ranger there.
Yeah, I lean. We could lean in the fours. I think that's a good spot. Are you thinking
Yeah.
higher fours? You thinking lower
Like in the
fours?
maybe mid like 4.6. Like I said, I
Yeah.
did compliment the strength of the individual songwriting techniques in each one. It's just so I don't want to take too much away.
I we can go with a four
Yeah.
six.
For Carpenters, I don't know how many albums we want to base this on. Just
Yeah,
because
I mean volumetrically it's lower,
exactly.
but at the same time there's 12 total albums.
Exactly. So if the
So
writing credits are enough to get the like we could maybe extrapolate to between 4 and 5 albums worth of original
I was
material.
thinking around 5 albums. I think you're looking at if you take 9 tracks to be like an album size,
Hmm.
I would think 5 albums makes sense.
Sure.
And I think if you do that, I know that you thought some of the things towed the line and crossed the line of the stacker and sweet
And
range,
I do.
and that's okay.
It's not enough that I wouldn't add points onto the 4.3 that they started with
Yeah.
because even when I thought it was a problem on the first one, I was still interested enough in the songwriting to not be overcome by it.
Yeah,
Just
because for me, some of the most interesting things that they do is the harmonics and the
yeah,
sound and the,
for
and
sure.
the blending of their voices, and those are all contributory in the songwriting
Yeah.
process. Like I would be fine giving them as close to a 5 as you're willing to go from a 4
Yeah.
3.
I'm willing to go to a 5 actually.
Then I love it. I fully agree.
Yeah.
I think they're a group that are above average, and then it's
Yeah,
just volume wise, they just
totally.
fall average.
I no, I agree. Um Poetic talent.
Here's the thing.
I'm not big
Nah,
on this for
Night
Night Ranger.
Ranger their best album was their last album, and lyrically it was bland and rough and
Yeah.
not good.
I mean, and also their one
Oh my
really
gosh, hold
big
on. Give me a
song,
second.
Holding On.
What's up?
We have to evacuate the building,
Okay.
so if you could stop talking to me.
So our building fire
Yeah.
alarm's going off, and I have to evacuate the
All right.
building.
Well, I paused right where we were going to talk about whatever. So
Cool. So we'll have
see
to
ya.
remember what that is. I'll be back in a few minutes.
All right.
I'm gonna put this on. I'm just gonna leave it streaming.
Okay. I'm going to walk away and refill
Yeah,
my
you
water
walk
bottle.
away. I'll call you when I'm coming
Yeah.
back.
All right.
We're still gonna be streaming. I can't stop that. So.
sick still. Oh, bye.
I gotta finish this. Hey, buddy.
Okay. How are you?
Great.
Great.
Living the dream.
Perfect.
So, 2 fire trucks showed up and a fire marshal. No idea what happened. They walked around for a bit. The alarm turned off. They said, "You're good to go back inside." So,
Okay.
whatever.
Did you ask the fire marshal where he was at a what's it called last weekend? At the whorehouse?
I did not. I didn't
was-
want to bring it up.
Okay, because he should have been
He
there.
should have been there. That's for damn sure.
Okay, I have no idea what we were saying.
Yeah, me neither.
We were about to grade Poetic Town.
Okay. I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna leave a lot of that in because that's good content.
Okay.
So when you're done, when you load back in, I'll say something and we'll go into it.
Just hit unpause.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going in 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, all right. Well, I don't remember where we were because
I don't either.
That was happening. So I left a little bit of that in. We had to evacuate my building. Had to go outside in the cold for a little bit, find out what was going on, just to find out we don't know what's going on.
Nothing.
The alarm, the building fire alarm went off for a while. That's the noise that you were hearing throughout the episode, which then turned into we have to evacuate, which then turned into, nah, you're fine. You can go back inside. Alarm's off.
Okay.
You're good. No explanation
Fine,
of
I
why
guess.
that happened. But hey,
Right.
I'd rather
But we were
be
gonna
safe than
talk-
sorry.
True. We were going to talk Poetic Town Square.
Yeah, Poetic Town scores. If I remember, Night Ranger.
You were saying something about Night Ranger, how it was meh.
And it
not
was
good.
indeed meh. And it got worse as it progressed because
Yeah.
the lyrics in the last album were just writing to the mean of like the Southern rock trope. And it didn't actually
Sure.
feel like it was based on any personal experience from the band, which I struggle with. You can write
Yeah.
a story that you haven't personally lived, but you can do it in a convincing way, and I feel like it wasn't done in the Night Ranger stuff. It just felt like, oh, there are stories where this happens, where love, blah, 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 and then wrote it, and it didn't feel authentic.
Sure. And like I think we were maybe going to make a point about the lyrics on their like one and enduring song,
Yeah.
Sister Christian. Like, it's an interesting choice of topic for a song,
Sure.
I guess. Like, hey, little sister, you are getting old now, and you're going to have things that are going to be happening. So please just think real hard about any actions that you might want to take, because maybe they aren't good.
It's
I was like,
certainly
all right. All right.
Something.
Okay.
It's certainly something.
It always struck me as a little weird,
I would agree.
but that's just me.
I would agree, but it's catchy, so it stuck around.
That's true.
Uh,
I don't know. Another 4 score
yeah,
and
probably a
7 years ago.
4.
A 4 is fine by
I'm
me.
living in the 4 range.
Yeah, and then the Carpenters here have the issue of,
Covers.
well, all those covers
All
that
those covers.
they they didn't arrange the lyrics, so
That's
you
true.
can't even really get the.
That's true, but I mean, it's not terrible because
No,
we're
I
still
think we're just
working with a
starting from a
number.
4-3 again.
Yeah, we're starting from a 4-3 again, and I would be fine leaving them there. I'm not going to take away points for the lyrics for the Carpenters. I felt
Sure.
like, even though the music sometimes skewed a little saccharine,
Yes.
lyrically, it always felt like a little more depth than you would expect. And especially getting some of the context from Richard Carpenter that their sickly sweet personas were crafted by the label,
Yeah.
and some of the interpretations initially of their lyrics were not correct, and
Sure.
you add that context and then you start to get a much more varietal blend of lyrics than I would expect.
Sure.
And so I'm fine either leaving them at the 4-3 and just kind of moving on.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
nothing
if you want to
really.
argue it up,
I
you
wouldn't
can, but I'm okay
necessarily
with it.
argue it up because nothing also jumped out as being like exceptional, like
Yeah.
metaphor or exceptional storytelling. It all just felt like it both fit the genre they were going for, but they
Mhm.
played around with a little bit more depth than they were ever given
Okay.
credit for.
Sure. Fair. Do we have any X Factor to assign here? I've
So,
got nothing for Night Ranger.
some X Factor stuff potentially for the Carpenters. I mentioned that they have multiple songs in the Grammy Hall of Fame.
True.
I mentioned that the unfortunate passing of Karen Carpenter, one that in and of itself could be,
Yeah,
the
I agree.
terrible death X Factor that we've had in the
Hmm.
past, as well as it contributing to a rather mainstream movement and shift towards a focus on
Yeah.
eating disorders
No, I
and
agree
their
with that.
dangers. So I think all of that does combine for a bit of X Factor points.
I agree.
The question is, how
Um,
much do we want to go?
I could be in the 1-ish
Yeah, I
range.
was leaning towards a 1. It felt like you don't want to do too much with the passing and the stuff and the research
Hmm.
and spotlight combined. That and the Grammy Hall of Fame, I think a point works.
Very good. Then I have final scores. And winning this week's episode, it didn't play for me, so I don't. I'm sure you
It
hit the
played for
button and you
me.
heard it. Okay, I didn't hear it. But anyway, the Carpenters won this week with a 29.3.
Not bad at all.
No, very respectable. And coming in second place was Night Ranger with a 22.8.
You're gonna have to say that again. I played the thing.
Oh, well,
I even
who
held up a
would know?
finger, which
Because
means you
I
don't look at me when we do this.
Well, it depends. If I have to be, for instance, on a different screen so that I can look at data, I am not
Data's
looking at
not
you.
important, Nick. I'm important. I should be viewed at all
I know.
times.
All right, I'll just start keeping track of the scores on a little pad of paper in front of me.
There you go.
Night Ranger lost with a 22.8.
Honestly, not a bad score. You're in that 20 range. I think that's acceptable, especially since there were
It's
some
acceptable. They'll deal with it.
obvious holes in the Night Ranger discography for
Correct.
us. So,
Yeah.
kudos for still breaking the 20 range. And kudos to the Carpenters for almost breaking that 30.
Yeah,
You
they came
know,
close.
it was good. I would have really appreciated, like, one of the things that really saddened me about the Carpenters was I fully believe that Karen Carpenter's voice would have continued to age downward.
Probably, yeah.
And I
Probably
would have loved to hear
would
the
have been
like
interesting.
almost bassy alto of her in her like 50s.
Yeah, we missed out on that. We missed out
Ugh.
on that for Amy Winehouse too.
I know. Like, come on.
I know. Yeah,
If you
it's
are
a
an
shame.
alto singer with some success or some endurance in the music industry,
Yeah,
please
please be
continue
healthy.
well into your 50s and stay healthy. Because I want
Yeah.
to hear I want nothing more than to hear somebody whose voice was already low
Mhm.
continue to age and just like nail it.
Yeah. Now, I
Need it.
think I think you'll, based on this conversation, be very excited for next week's episode, which is gonna square off two legendary musical figures who died younger than we would have hoped, unfortunately.
I just said it. I just said to stop doing that.
Yeah, well, next week's matchup is literally all about two singers who died young. Well, one who died young, one who died in like middle age, but like definitely way younger than we would
Younger than
think
we
of
would want.
someone
Of course.
dying. Yeah, very
That's
sad.
fair. Listen, I would love for nothing more than for everybody that I want to die late to die late. Like,
Agree.
there are
But
some people who I
instead,
just don't care.
but
But,
instead, we'll
you know,
get like Henry Kissinger for 100 years, and then we
that's what I'm
get
saying.
we get Jane Christie for 30. You know,
And you
like that's the
have
balance that we.
you've come to the crux of my issue.
I was going to say Dick Cheney will live into his 200s.
Oh
However,
no.
all these other people will be sacrificed for it.
Good. All right.
Yes.
All right, listen. I'm going to hope that my building alarm doesn't go off anymore today.
Well, it's no longer my problem. So if it needs to go off again, I mean,
Oh, I'll make it your problem. While everybody here, what I hope you all do: cherish your loved ones, listen to good music, and have a great day. And fuck Dick Cheney.
oh yes,
What a little interesting hiccup in our recording.
yeah, that was unexpected, I must say.
I would be inclined to agree. Unexpected is a good term.
Never happened before.
Ooh, that's okay. Whatever.
Yeah. Who do you want?
Um, I'll take Bobby Darin.
Very good. I will take Roy then.
Yeah.
Should be good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm imagining a pleasant week.
Me too. I think we'll have a couple. Well, maybe not next week. The week after that.
What's the week after that?
Maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe a couple.
Who
Oh,
knows
oh
about
shit.
zebra? The zebra episode is a giant question mark.
Zebra versus zebra.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that'll be the distinction we make. We'll have to start.
We
race
did
week.
Patty Smith and Patty Smythe. And we'll do zebra
Yeah,
zebra.
Zebra.
All right.
I'll tell you, like, I'll volunteer to take the Yugoslav zebra, but I am not going to get any information on them. I'm just, there's just no way. I'll read their entire Wikipedia page, which is probably like a paragraph and a half.
I
But
believe in
that's
you.
okay.
I believe in you. Maybe start making some calls.
I'm gonna have to.
Try to get in touch with their publicist.
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
learn whatever Slavic language that you'll need to speak with their publicist.
Yeah. Let's see that they are okay. They were formed in Belgrade, so they're Serbian.
Okay, but now you know.
Yeah.
Start working.
They
on
were
it.
they were a prominent act of the Yugoslav rock scene in the late 70s. So
Hit up their publicist. First, go on Duolingo, not a sponsor.
yeah.
Get conversational in Serbian, and make it happen. Okay.
Okay. Oh, they only have one album. And they have one album and one EP. Where if the tracks are different, it might be worth listening to the EP just to get a little.
I'd be open to it.
A little more.
We'll have to discuss.
Yeah. Fascinating. It's coming up
Cool.
soon enough that I'm like, I better start thinking about this now.
It's true. It's true. It's already Sunday. We only have a certain number of days
Yeah.
before we record again. Are you good for Thursday?
Yeah. That should be fine.
Cool. Then I will.
Yeah, I'm teaching at 3 o'clock, so I will be pretty much ready to roll by 4.
Okay, yeah, I'll be on.
So
Should be on right at 4:30, depending on if for some reason I have to work late. I'd let you know, but I
yeah.
should be good at 4:30.
All right. Now here is something that's actually really important that I need to do.
Okay.
What the actual fuck? Why am I not allowed to copy and paste?
You should be. I don't know what's stopping you. Is it a mental block?
I just keep doing it and it will not. Like, I just keep getting a V in YouTube. Okay. I can't. The copy and paste function is not working.
Fascinating.
I wonder if it's a
Are you hitting
thing?
command?
No.
You're on an Apple device, are you not?
Yeah, I don't know which one. I'm hitting the same thing that I always hit.
Oh, it should be command C and command V.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I just had to make sure that this album actually existed. And it is on YouTube.
It is. Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. This won't be confusing at all. Two
Yeah.
bands, same name.
It's gonna be rough. There are no comments. This video was put up 7 years ago and has 2,000 views. Okay, that's something. I'm now listening to it just to get a little taste. Oh, okay.
Ah. There's some interest. I hear it.
We can probably get away with like 10 seconds of this.
I like it. I like what
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
All right, so that'll be an interesting time.
Cool. All right.
Have to do more of that in the future.
Well, I have to go make some waffles.
Yes, I'm gonna go make not waffles.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, you got to be getting ready for bed soon.
Yeah, so I'm preparing dinner.
Yeah, of course. A nice late night snack of this for you.
Yeah, that's true.
At this rate, you might not even beat the sun to bed.
I shudder to think.
All right, go live your dreams. I'm gonna go. Hope I don't have to evacuate again. I'll see you. All right, what a fun-filled, action-packed day this was. Everybody stay safe and have a great day.